Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 245 of The Ball is Round. My name is Andy Coronado, and tonight on a Tuesday night on the show, it's postmortem time for Roses FC. We'll give our end of season evaluation on the Roses FC 2025 inaugural season, as well as a reaction to the big news from the MLS that will impact CF Montreal. Guys, as always, I'm joined tonight by West Island's finest Greek man, Elias Grigoriadis. How we doing,
Damn
man? I didn't
straight.
write that introduction. I didn't write that introduction.
Don't don't
AI
don't
did.
go putting words in my mouth. That was all you, man. Come on.
I don't know,
Ain't no
man.
way.
Somebody's writing these things
Ain't
down.
no way.
Dude, it's a Tuesday night. It's a work day for most of us. So I'm sorry if I seem a little bit slower, stutter over my words. Maybe I'm eating a lollipop in the middle of the show. I don't know what's happening today, but it's a Tuesday night, and usually we do these on Sunday night. So thank you all so much for joining us while you're eating dinner, finish dinner, whatever it is that you do on the Tuesday nights.
Waiting for the Canada game to start.
Waiting for the Canada game to start. Thank you all so much for joining us. Forgot about there's so much going on. So much going on, Elias.
Never a dull moment. Barcelona's
Today,
back at the Camp Nou.
uh,
Life is good.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so let's not talk about Campton.
2 years, man. I
Did
waited
you
for this shit.
did you hear
2 years
about
and they're back.
Lionel Messi sneaking into Camp Nou?
Yeah, man, that was awesome. It was they had a training session in Spain or something, the national team. Elche. I don't know where that is in Spain, but he was just like, you know what? I do what I want. I'm Lionel Messi. So we're going to the new camp because I said so. Who's going to stop him? Who's going to be like, actually, no, you can't?
Yeah. No, you know what? Imagine a security guard, never seen soccer in his life. He's like, sorry, sir, but
My security. I saw these videos of like people like pretending to be the security guard. They're opening. They're like, oh my god, it's 1 a.m. Why is there someone? Oh shit! Hi, yeah, you can come in for sure.
I'm not
Man.
getting
Yeah.
paid enough to
Don't
say
worry
no
about
to
it.
this man. Listen, just a quick shout out to my friend Kevin. Yes, Caesar, as you guys know, my Latinos have 30,000 names, so Caesar is one of my names. Shout out, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Wait, hold on. You gotta drop the full govy now. What's the full name?
No. Next, I'm gonna give my social insurance number. Look, before we get started, guys, just a quick
No, I'd
reminder
rather
that
the credit card number, the three numbers at the back specifically.
in the back of the card, right? And my mother's maiden name. So before we get started, guys, just a quick reminder that if you listen to a show and like what you hear and see, click on the subscribe button to support The Ball is Round. While you're at it, make sure to also subscribe to all of our social media platforms for daily update. Blue Sky X, YouTube, Instagram. We are everywhere, man. And you know where else we are now? We're on Reddit. Dude, there is such... I know some of the people from the Reddit community also have joined us recently, and just want to give a shout out to anybody from that is on that social media platform. But let's get right into it because we got a big show, man. We got a big show. So we're gonna start, as always. You guys know with CF Montreal the kind of format we do, except this one with Roses FC Elias, we only have had 1 year, so we can't really do compare and contrast and all that. We won't delve into each player specifically. We might just go into positions, but we'll still talk about it. We'll talk what we've observed throughout the year. So let's start with the goalies. In the goalies, we had Anna Karpenko and Gabriel Lambert that spent most of the season rotating in and out of the lineup due to injury, with Karpenko finishing the season. What did you think of the goalie? Now the Elias is actually sharing a screenshot on the right now. We're sharing a screenshot, and essentially that's what the roster is going to look like. We're going to talk about that a little bit later because there might be some names missing there, Elias, in that list because there were roster decisions made earlier today. But yeah, we'll talk. As far as the goalies, we had Anna Karpenko. Elias, we talked a lot about it in the show, right?
Yeah.
Because it was kind of I think it was a big topic of discussion for us in the middle of the season. We felt like Anna Karpenko, I don't know, she struggled a bit. I really liked her performances towards the end of the season. I felt that she actually did a lot better. She was much better in stopping the ball, but they also wouldn't put her too much in a position where she had to deal with the ball by herself. She wasn't so high up the field. They kept her back, right? But I was always the one vouching for that. I wanted Gabrielle Lambert to have more of starts because I felt like her performances actually like justified her playing more. Now, obviously, we don't know everything because I know that Gabrielle Lambert also had kind of a long-term injury throughout the season that kind of held her back. But the few times we saw her play were like she was actually she actually performed well. What did you think of the goalie? And just before you give me your take here, we have Mr. Matt that's telling us, "Going good evening. Hope my electricity holds until the end of the show this time. We do too, man. We do too. We hope our electricity holds
cold as
on."
hell out there. So,
but thanks so much for joining us tonight. So go ahead, Elias. What do you think of the goalies of the Rose FC this season?
yeah, look. I mean, Anna Karpenko, and I think that at the postmortem today, a lot of some interesting context was put forward that a lot of these players, this is their first professional contract, and again, that's not an excuse, but it does kind of show to you the difference between playing at the semi-pro level, playing in League One Ontario, and what's required to succeed professionally. And one of it is just consistency. It's ruthless consistency, right? And that's what you saw from Toronto all season, right? I think except for, they lost the first game of the season, they dipped. But other than that, they were top two the entire season. And when they got first place out away from Montreal in July?
Yeah.
They didn't look back. People came up, people came close, people came within a game, people came within a couple of points, but it was just the efficiency and the way that no matter what, they delivered. And so, yeah, I think that Anna Karpenko's best, unfortunately, came when the team was at their worst because she was kind of forced to simplify her game, right? I feel like when Montreal was dominating games and they had, all this possession and they were controlling every chance, she was a bit all over the place. But the second that Montreal was suffering possession, they were conceding chances and shots all the time, she had to focus more on just tending the goal and being a goalkeeper rather than all the other stuff that come with playing in that position. And so, yeah, I think in terms of just playing her position and doing her job, it was a lot more clear cut. But again, that's also now going to come down to over the course of the offseason, how do you ensure that even when you have good games, your goalie's staying focused? Because look, that costs points, right? Samana Karpenko mistakes don't happen, and this team is maybe in third place, maybe they're even in second place, and all of a sudden you don't play Toronto in the semifinals, you play Vancouver or Ottawa, and that's an entirely different story, right? But again, we're not here to delve into what ifs and maybes and because it's going to be a 45-year podcast, and we're not going to do that. But at the end of the day, that is one thing that she has to focus on now, and that's a good thing because you've seen the good she can bring. You've also seen the difficulties she have, but I think that Wally actually makes a really good point here. Do you have confidence in bringing back Karpenko and Lambert in 2026? Is that enough? Yeah, it's enough. Because that competition, they've both shown that they can play at this level, right? I'm not talking about a goalie that's going to keep you. Remember, there's 23 goals in 25 games, right?
24 goals conceded in 20 starts.
24. Sorry, yeah. So I mean, this is still the best defense in the NSL.
But that number kind of bothers me a little bit because it is 20 starts. Yes, you mentioned that some of the goals were her fault, plainly her fault, and we saw it in the playoffs.
And completely avoidable, right?
Yeah, but is one more year going to justify to answer Wally's question? I
think she's done enough to earn the right to chance. Exactly.
But if she starts messing up again, if we see the same tendencies that we saw at the beginning of throughout the first season in 2025, 5 games absolutely.
In, no, 100%. She has no more like safety net, right? For sure. But I think what both goalkeepers have done in order to make themselves advocate for themselves as the number one goalie, the number one and number two goalie is enough for them both to come back next year. I don't think you have to complicate your life by going and finding another goalie, because in terms of pure quality, it's there, but the lapses in concentration have to be addressed. That's the big thing with her, right? It's not actual quality as a goalkeeper, right? It was the concentration. It was the lapses in focus, and she switches off, and all of a sudden, horrifying mistake, and now you drop points or you lose. So I think that's the biggest thing.
But like I said, I saw a massive improvement in the playoffs because yes, they did the Toronto score. I think I said since they qualified for the playoffs, I think they conceded, the Rose FC conceded 14 goals and only scored like 3. I don't have the numbers on top of my head right now, but it was a massive change. Now, not all of them were her fault. We're going to talk about the defense in a bit because there was also a collapse from that end as well. But I did see that she was a lot more decisive towards the end as the actions that she went. But again, maybe the role did change, right? Maybe her role, like as you mentioned, maybe the extra things, maybe she was given too much to do at the beginning, and she just wasn't really able to handle, because she I think this is well known in soccer that goalkeepers do take a little bit of time to get comfortable in the role.
She's 23, right?
Exactly.
By goalie standards, as like a child.
And exactly, so that the same thing, and obviously we're talking about Rose FC right now, but we did talk a lot about Jonathan Sirois, and we criticized a lot his play and everything. But at the time, I think he was 21, 22 years old. He's also super young, so it's hard to really justify him, like them at that age. You'd want, and that's why I would have liked to see Gabriel Lambert inserted more into the starting lineup, obviously barring any injury, to be able to at least give Karpenko some like breathing time, some, I don't know, an opportunity to take a step back and really be able to come back with more confidence. Because Elias, I feel like especially during a good stretch in the summer, she was in the starting lineup, and you could see it, and I think forwards started seeing that she was not very secure with the ball. She didn't feel very well about it. And so starting next season, I think the bar is higher for Anna Karpenko, and if she again starts making the same mistakes, I think Roses FC, and we'll talk about what they need to do in the offseason, but I think they really, really need to get ready to have a plan B or plan C. Obviously not hoping for the best for Anna Karpenko, that she does have an excellent season next season, but I do think that they need to think that position a little bit more this offseason and not take it for granted, because I think it did play a major part of Roses FC season this season. Do you think that they need to look, because I know that they activated, and we'll talk about the some of the roster decisions that were done today. Do you think that, because right now they're gonna have 3 goalkeepers, right? They're gonna have Anna Karpenko, Gabriel Lambert, and today they also did Anna Marie Laroche. The option. So they're gonna have 3 goalkeepers. Now we haven't seen any of Laroche, so we don't know if she's gonna be very good or very bad. We don't know what they see, right? But
yeah, I mean, you never really see your third keeper. Unless,
but what do you think that was the smartest?
You only have one competition, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, look, they're not going to just pick up contracts for a third goalkeeper and options for no reason, right? If she does, it's kind of like the Sebastian Breza factor, right? How is she in training? How is she in the locker room? And is she helping? Is she doing what she can to help? That's basically all you do as a third goalkeeper, is you do what you can to help. Whether it's an extra body in training, whether it's support, whether it's, bringing another set of eyes to whenever discussions you have as a goalkeeping group with the goalkeeping coach and the 2 other goalkeepers. Look, especially when you're in a league that only has one competition, you don't have a Canadian Championship, you don't have a Leagues Cup or Champions League yet. It's just the NSL. You don't have fixture congestion that'll warrant using a third goalie. You barely have enough congestion that warrants using a second goalkeeper. So I think really it's what can you bring off the field. And so if they're satisfied with what, Anne-Marie Laroche, who's, 25 and she's, in the prime of her career, and she's just, there as support, then I'm not gonna focus too much on that.
Yeah. So heading into 2026, I think the goalkeeping position is going to be one that we're going to be keeping a close eye on, because it needs to be a major part of his team. I think the way Robert Russell Toyu plays his scheme involves the goalkeeping a lot, but towards the latter end of the season, we also saw that was used too much. They were playing too much negative football and not enough forward. So you do want to go ahead and see a little bit of change next season. Let's move on. As I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and talk about the position, right? So next up, we got the defenders. So majority of the season consisted of Lucy Capadonna, who, by the way, played the most minutes this season of any Roses FC player. She actually played more minutes than Megan Sauvé by 1 minute. By 1 minute, according to the NSL website. And Stephanie Hill. So Lucy Capadonna and Stephanie Hill, with Julia Leals dealing also with a long-term injury. What are some of your thoughts on the defenders this season?
I mean, look, if you take out the last game of the season, that second leg against Toronto, the center back position has arguably been the most consistent position all season. Because even before her injury, Julia Leals was super solid. She was consistent, and she was a very good partner for Lucy Capodona. Stephanie Hill comes in, fits like a hand in a glove, and all three of them were playing. It's not just an acceptable level; it's at a top level, right? There's a reason that this is the best defense in the NSL, and it's because of the fact that they gave up very little down the middle, and it's unfortunate that the way the season ended with that game was just, again, nobody had a good game, but the center back position in particular, even when Stephanie Hill came on, didn't help all that much. Just categorically a stinker, right? And that's soccer sometimes, right? You're not Paolo Maldini. You're not, Wendy Renard. You're not going to have a perfect game every game. That happens. But, it's unfortunate. That's kind of the last impression you're going to leave on your way out of the 2025 season. But you also have to remember the 26 other performances that were really good. I can't think of a single game where I looked at it and I went, oh, they are absolutely in over their head. Yeah, there were better games and worse games, obviously, but they had the measure of their attackers for the most part every single game. And I think that says a lot for, three players that have never played together, that never had a professional contract before, that all three of them came out of university, right? Julia Leeson and Capodona came out of NCAA. Obviously, Stephanie Hill came from McGill and U Sports. And the three of them, without missing a beat, came in and were super solid. And again, another fourth one that deserves a lot of credit is Olivia Mbala. Mm-hmm. Because she came in, she did not have that many minutes. She was really just like a substitute that came in a handful of times to close out games. And she is super solid. Her reading of the game and the fact that she cuts out so much of the play, having her at, I think she's in her early 30s as well, having an experienced center back, having an experienced center back at 33 that you can kind of learn off of and really use to help what is a relatively young defensive group is super important. So the center back position, I think, at least for the foreseeable future, again, you always want to look at what's available to you. But if we're going to look at, stuff that has to be reinforced, center back position, in my opinion, is the last thing you have to look at.
Yeah. I think that position specifically is one that we saw this season, as you mentioned, being the most consistent. However, to me, it was worrisome what happened in the playoffs, because I saw another Lucy Capodana. Lucy Capodana has been fantastic defensively. She's been consistent. I even said in this show, I said it in my articles that I wrote, I believe Lucy Capodana should be the captain next year of this team. I really do think she's present, she's there, she's level-headed. But she did not have a good playoff performance against Toronto. And Toronto's a very good team. Any defender is going to struggle. But what happened is that when we look at the stats, Stephanie Hill is also a fantastic defender, but she's also very focused offensively. She likes to go forward. So when you have a defender like her that likes to go forward, you need a Lucy Capodana to always be sure-footed defensively. And it just felt like during the playoffs, Toronto overwhelmed her, and you really saw a bad side. That you saw her get beat out one-on-one, things that you had never seen during the regular season. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll talk a little bit later, but when you had that one-on-one with Tanya Boychuk, she did tell you, she was pretty transparent about it. She said, when it mattered, we just didn't perform, and that was the truth of it, right? And we're like I said, we're talking about performances. Lucy Capodana, to me, had an MVP season.
I think you could point at 13 people, in the playoffs who didn't perform. Let's be fair, but yeah, you're right. No, I mean also subs, but yeah, I mean you're right though. You look at the level Lucy Capodana was at, who was arguably, you're right, deserves MVP of the season. I think it's a tough list at the top there, but I think she's definitely amongst the people that was the most consistent and impressive all year. But yeah, the playoffs were horrible, right? Even in the first game in Montreal or in Laval, the first goal came from her side and came from just a free shot in the middle of the box. That can't happen.
Yeah,
that can't happen. So,
and that's again, she's only 23 years old. As a defender, also similar to goalies, in my opinion, as you get older, you get better. I just think that's experience or in the reading of the game that it comes. I felt like Lucy Capodana played at another level. Given her age, she played very consistent, level-headed. We had her on the show. she was fantastic. I thought she showed her maturity even in the interviews. But she needs that veteran presence. You talked about Olivia Mbala. One of the things that I liked about Olivia was that a few times that she did play as a super sub, regardless of the score, she played the same way. There was a lot of she showed her a veteran presence, a player
always
that
in the right spot. She was
exactly.
never out of position.
Exactly. And so they could be down 5-0, they could be up 1-0. She played the same way and she was productive. She didn't show that immaturity that some of the players, and we'll talk about it a little bit, some of the subs that might have gone to the field, and the level dropped massively, right? So I would have liked to see Olivia Mbala. Now I knew you were talking about Julia Leas a little bit. I also like how she performed at the beginning of the season. However, after she came back from injury, I felt like it took her a bit to catch up, which is normal. I'm not blaming her for that, but it's a tough spot to be put on. And I'm thinking at this point, like, should she have been used as much? Like, because I believe, if I'm not wrong, she started instead of Stephanie Hill in one of the playoff games, right?
In the second one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's again, to me, that doesn't really make sense. I think she's very talented, but you've kind of created that dynamic between Lucy Capadon and Stephanie Hill. Why are you changing something that doesn't necessarily not work per se, right?
Yeah. I mean, especially when you look at the damage that Esther Okoronkwo did to that back line, having someone having a 6'1" defender not being used is kind of like, all right. But again, you know what? Honestly, with the way that the entire team was playing, it doesn't matter who was on the field. You could have had Vanessa Gil out there, and I think Esther Okoronkwo scoring a hat trick. So again, if you base, I feel like we kind of have to like cut our perception of that last game out of our brain, because again, granted, I don't think this team is of the quality of losing 6-1 in the playoffs. I think it was closer to I think it's a much closer tie. They just played abnormally bad, but yeah, like as a center back trio, if you will, those are the three starters. I think they have the makings for what could be, if you get the right combination in the right form, the strongest center back pairing in the league.
Absolutely, when they're healthy and they're present the whole time, right?
Yeah.
But it's something that obviously, and they talked a lot about it in the presser earlier today, that they are looking at profiles because they want to they don't want to run into the same kind of trouble. So hopefully that goes along the lines of finding those backups and those replacements, so that you don't have starters that are being benched necessarily. That's not what you want, but you want there to be some competition and some subs that the level doesn't lower. So I want to see more Olivia Mbala next season. That I will say. I think she's an important piece, and that she brings that stability and maybe some mentorship to some of the younger defenders. Right. I absolutely love Stephanie Hill. Her performance. I thought she, I spoke to her during the premiere of the pitch, and I told her, well, what was the, what you started in the bench, and then you kind of worked your way, to be a starter. And she told me, yeah, well, look, I've always taken that approach of I do things, whatever opportunity I do the most of it. And I was given a few opportunities, and the coaches really liked what they saw. And it wasn't just the coaches. We started seeing a huge improvement in the how she contributed offensively. I mean, 5 goals, and they were not just simple goals. They were some bangers that she scored. So that to me shows the potential that Stephanie Hill has. But again, for that, you need a solid veteran defender behind her, Olivia Mbala or Lucy Capadon, someone that is going to be solid defensively all the time, which wasn't the case during the playoffs. Now, I know, Elias, you're saying, let's just forget about the playoffs, because it's hard to, because it happened. It happened, and unfortunately,
it happened. But I mean, you have to admit that this was an outlier, right? You can't look at one game and then go, the last 26 games don't matter. Of course, if they make the playoffs again next season and they drop an absolute stinker in the playoffs again next season, then you have to start being like, okay, what the hell is going on here? When the lights are on, why do certain players not perform? But these players have played in, NCAA championships and national championship games at college, so they're used to games with high pressure. So I'm chalking up the Toronto series in general, just both Toronto legs, up to shit happens. I think once a pattern emerges, then you can really start, showing concern. but I'm not gonna start, ringing the alarm bell for 1.5 bad games.
Yeah, and look, the way I want to see it, at least for the roster, I would like to see all of these players perform. The ones that we talked about, Lucy Capadonna, Stephanie Hill. I want Stephanie Hill to continue progressing, to kind of continue what she started this season and continue in 2026. I would like to see the same thing for Lucy Capadonna, but I want Lucy Capadonna to add another face to her game, because she was. We mentioned it several times how good she was and consistent she was defensively. But I would want her I would want to see her be a little bit more offensive as well, to read the game a little more offensively, contribute with assists, maybe score goals here and there. I'm not saying she didn't try, but you definitely want to see, that girl, Julia Leah, same thing. You want her to find her form early on so that she doesn't have those kind of long-term injuries. It will happen, but you don't want it to happen too often and that you get that label of injury prone. And yeah, you just want to see a continuity. You don't want to see any regression in 2026 for any of these players. So we're going to, as I mentioned, for goalkeeping, we're going to keep a close eye on the defenders, because they are probably, in my opinion, what's going to be the core of this team moving forward, because I think there's going to be more changes in the other positions besides them. Sure. Let's move on. Let's move on to, sorry, did you want to say something else? Sorry.
No.
Let's move on to the wingback/fullbacks, a position that was crucial in Robert Rosatoyu's scheme and that saw inconsistent performances throughout the season. Elias, when the wingbacks and fullbacks were not good, the game was not good. When they were very good, the game was very, very good.
Yeah.
But that's a problem, because you can't have that inconsistency. I mean, when we talked about the subs having a drop of level, I saw it in that position more specifically, in the wingback fullback. The moment you take Lara Schenk out and you put a Haley Whitaker, the moment you put, or vice versa, you put a Jodie Smith started and then you replace her with Megan Sauvé, whatever it was, they were. I think Mara Bouchard at some point played the right back as well. You always saw like a drop in position. So this is a position that to me is crucial in this offseason that is going to have to be addressed. Haley Whitaker,
we'll start on the right.
Yeah, Haley Whitaker, who did some time with Lara Schenk as well, right on that side. Lara Schenk
and Julia Lees had some shifts at right back too.
That's true. When they were kind of desperate in the injury because Lara Schenk was out. But Haley Whitaker had 1 goal, 1 assist, 10 shots, 62 tackles. And Lara Schenk also had started 13, so they kind of split time there. Had 3 shots, no goals, no assists, but 36 tackles. I really liked Lara Schenk in that position much more than Haley. I've said in this show over and over again, Haley Whitaker brought tremendous offensive prowess to the like final third, right? I thought she was very creative offensively, but defensively, oh my God, she would always, her side was always very vulnerable. And I said on this show over and over again, teams were very easy to attack. Were exploiting the right flank when she was there, and she was having a hard time. I kept calling for her benching, Elias, but she kept starting. So obviously,
you can't start anybody else. There's nobody else there.
Yeah, well, there was Lara Schenk, but Lara
Schenk is injured. That's why. Yeah. I mean, that's why she didn't get her. Again, we're going to talk about it a bit more, but her contract didn't get picked up, right? Her option didn't get picked up for a reason. It's unfortunate, but when you're not available, you can't be relied upon.
What I would like to see from Haley Whitaker is either she, as I mentioned earlier, she would add a phase to her game where she improves defensively, or she's a lot more focused defensively so that she can prioritize that position, or they change her to a winger where she can solely focus on being offensive and have somebody, a solid defender behind her that can cover the flank. What do you think?
I think you have to look at Haley Whitaker's season in 2 phases. You look at before the formation change and after the formation change, because when she played in the 4-4-2 and she had an actual dedicated wide midfield, not a winger, a wide midfielder, whether it was Tanya Boychuk or Latifa Abdou, she was excellent.
Yeah,
because she could combine. She didn't have to only navigate that right side by herself. She had people to cover for her defensively. Everything was kind of well organized and was extremely balanced. And I think that she benefited from it the most. You take a look at the formation change into a 4-2-3-1, and you have proper out and out wingers. I think she suffered the most in the formation change because of just the fact that she doesn't have that partner out wide anymore. Because when you have Cherim Kang, she just the profile of her player is someone that's gonna gravitate towards the middle of the field. That's gonna cut in, when she's taking somebody on, and it just leaves so much more space for Haley Whitaker to cover. And I think that's when stuff started to open up and stuff started to get a bit more complicated for her. I think, and it's not a coincidence that, mid August, we saw her form dip, because that's exactly when Cherim Kang came in and Latifa Abdul left and the formation change happened. So, for the most part, that's when the formation change happened, was end of August, early September, right? And so I'm not surprised that that's when, her responsibilities were kind of flipped on their head. And she had now, instead of being a fullback that had, that was more complementary, she had to be the presence on the right side, on the flank. And so, yeah, I think that, can she play that position? Absolutely, because she showed that she can in the first half of the season. I just think that if Robert Rosatoy is going to commit to having her as a starting right back, which I think is a viable idea, he has to organize the rest of the team, or at least the rest of the right side, so that it's, there's contingencies. Because if you're going to take the formation, and let's say you add a bunch of improvements all over the field, if you're going to take that scheme right now and that tactical setup right now, and you're going to put Haley Whitaker in there, you're going to get the same result, right? Because she can add elements to her game, but she can't be omnipresent. She can't be everywhere at once. And if you're a team that tries to hit back on the counter, and you're a team that wants to be, solid in transition, which is what, Robert Rosatoy and Marine Pichon kind of reinforced, well, then you need someone that can go up and down. And Haley Whitaker can go up, or she can, she could play back relatively well, but you ask her to do both, and that's when things get complicated.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the bigger difficulty lies for Robert Rosatoy in terms of planning his right side. Where does Cherim Kang fit into your scheme? Is she going to play in the 10, where I want her to play? Is she going to play on the right? And if she plays on the right, is it going to be someone that is, again, a bit more inverted? Because if that's the case, then things are going to get complicated for Haley Whitaker. So, this is a Robert Rosatoy problem. We're not going to break down every single issue that lies ahead, because again, it'll be too long of a pod. But that's what I'm looking for next season. I think that she has every ability to be a top right back in this league, but it has to be with the right setup for her.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we were saying with Anna Karpenko, right? When you put too much on their plate, is how much they struggle with too much responsibility, and how it at some point it impacts just the basics of the game. It's just passing, running, whatever it is. We're not talking about scoring 3 goals in one game. We're talking about the basics of getting back on defense and understanding what your role is. But it's just like anybody, and I'm not saying this because this is necessarily Roses FC player or Vancouver players. No, it's just, I think the human being, sometimes you gotta have to find the basics before you move on to more, like, say, advanced parts of the scheme, right? And I thought maybe they thought that they were a lot more prepared. Defensively, they were a lot more organized, especially in the wing back and fullback position, because of the success they had early on in the season. But then once they were tested through injuries or other teams adapting, because I think teams quickly adapted and realized that they could transition really, really well against Roses FC by attacking their flanks, and really taking Lucy Capadonna and Stephanie Hill out of position. But let's go ahead and talk about the other side, where we had the captain, Megan Sauvé. Now, I put her as a wingback fullback because that's where she finished off the season, but she did start the season as a winger. Now, I know you asked her today, you asked her in the press conference, right? Like, how was that change for you? And she said, well, I already played that position in the past in Europe. So it wasn't that, it was always a tool that the coaches were ready to use me as, and we saw her, at least, later in the season, I think, Elias, we saw her a lot more comfortable in that position as a left back.
She was excellent.
And just contributing. As I mentioned, she only played 1 less minute than Lucy Capadonna, so she was one of the players that was also always on the field. At times, it seemed like she was there too much, Elias, because there wasn't anybody that would replace her, like a Jody Smith, was not. We didn't know if they would necessarily have a positive impact on the game, or if the level would drop. She had 1 goal, 3 assists, 16 shots, 86 tackles, which is the most of any of the fullbacks that played that position. What do you think of Megan Silva's season?
Oh, I mean, look, she leads by example on the field. She's a fantastic worker. She has the perfect profile for a fullback anyway. I mean, you know, it makes sense given that she played it elsewhere, right, in overseas. So I think that honestly, having her as your starting left back is a really good piece to have. Jody Smith coming off the bench is a pretty good alternative, right? And Wally talking about Jody Smith, her minutes completely disappeared in the second half. The head coach seems to have lost total confidence in her because she takes up a non-Canadian spot. I wouldn't understand why she would come back. Look, I understand it because she started off the season as a starter. Lara Schenk had injury troubles, and so again, she got a better look towards the end of the season where she got more minutes as a sub. But yeah, I mean, if she's looking for starting minutes, I don't think it's going to be very tough to make your case ahead of Megan Sauvé, who is not only the captain, but has also shown to be arguably the most consistent player on the team this season, along with, Lucy Capadonna. So I think that you have those kinds of performances that your starting left back is putting in. Again, if Megan Sauvé stays healthy all season, I don't see anyone supplanting her, right? And I don't see why Marina Pichon would go out and get another left back. It makes no sense. So Lara Schenk isn't coming back this year. If Jody Smith accepts the reality, because again, she's under contract for this season, for this coming season. If that's the case, and they have Jody Smith and Megan Sauvé on the left-hand side, that is a fantastic two-headed left back pairing that should see you out at a high level for the rest of the season, right? Obviously, Jody Smith, with the form and the lack of minutes, didn't necessarily play up to Megan Sauvé's level, but she's 100% good enough because we've seen her be good enough. We saw her be good enough at the beginning of the season in the 4-4-2. So I think now that she has, another whole offseason to kind of get comfortable with her teammates and her situation and the tactics, I don't see why having that pairing isn't almost an ideal situation for them.
Yeah, I think I really like Jody Smith as a wing back. I think she has the speed to go up and down the field. Something we just mentioned about Hailey Whitaker. That's not something that she did consistently. But I will say this: Megan Sauvé, it's kind of, I mean, the moment that they decided to make her left back, it's almost nearly impossible to because she's the captain. She's the captain of the team. She's the face of this franchise, like a Samuel Piette, if you want, right? And so I think she's still young. She's 22 years old, and I think she showed, as you mentioned, that she can do more. But if she wants to be a starter, Elias, next year, Jody Smith can't just be good. She has to be great. She has to do the moments, like the minutes, if she's given 20, if she's given 30. The same thing that Stephanie Hill did. If she wants to get minutes, she needs to be great the moment she's there. And I think she showed good things. I think she showed promising things, but they need to be next level. Lara Schenk, I was personally rooting for her. Obviously, she was injured, but I was personally rooting for her because I really liked what she brought to her. I thought she brought a lot of consistency. She was, consistent in defense. I think offensively she struggled a little bit more than say Hailey Whitaker on either side. But I did think that she did her job. Yeah. A little surprised that someone of her age at 25 would not renew her contract. Obviously, like as you mentioned, there were injury concerns and all that. But I did think that
talked about it, right? She takes up an international slot and she barely played, right? Unfortunately, I think that's just the reality of the situation. You play a third of the season, they can't afford to waste an international slot on that. So I really think they liked her. I mean, they talked about how much they liked her, but it's just purely from a usage perspective that can't happen.
No. She definitely did show, and if they have to find somebody that is Canadian based or somebody that doesn't fill up an international slot, then that's what
they got to find another right back. That's for sure. They got to find at least someone to give Hailey Whitaker some competition, and also just some depth. I think they need. They shouldn't go out and get another left back. I think that's a bit counterproductive.
But yeah, I do agree with what Wally was saying about Jody Smith disappearing because I was surprised by the move. Elias, I said in this show several times. I thought she could have brought maybe a different face to the game that could have maybe brought a little bit more life when the offense was not showing much, but too little, too late. She unfortunately didn't show anything in crucial moments. So that does it for the wingbacks and fullbacks. Let's go ahead and talk about the midfielders. Now, this is a topic of discussion, okay? Because the midfielders were, how would I say this? They were inconsistent, but also not very clear as to who was playing midfielder. Because, and we talked about it in this show, I felt like, especially after the Latif Abdul left the team, Charlotte Bibo was being played in a position that was, I don't know if I want to define it as a midfielder, because she was right next to the striker. But you know, there were a lot of changes in midfield throughout the season, but veterans Charlotte Bibo and Ali Hess were mainstays, even if they moved around a bit, with Chloe Minas joining the group later in the season and solidifying her place. By the way, I do want to mention something about Chloe Minas that came up yesterday, Elias. I didn't realize this. I don't know if you realize this, but she actually has a YouTube channel where she makes videos where she talks about her being a footballer in Sweden and also in Montreal. And I found it. I actually watched like 5-6 videos. Chloe, I don't even know if she looks at this at the show, but anybody that is interested in knowing a footballer's life and a very personal video like of her lifestyle, I highly recommend you watch it. I was super interested in it, and more than anything, Elias, something she mentioned in one of the videos, she said, why does she make these videos? Her purpose for making the videos was because she says that one day she knows that she will have kids, and she will want her kids to watch those videos. So she wants to leave a digital footprint for her kids to witness her having been a soccer player at some point. Because she gave an example where she said, and she's Greek too, and she said her dad had told her that he was a DJ when he was younger, but she says, but I have no proof. There's nothing that proves to me. So if I'm going to tell my kids that I was a soccer player at some point, I want there to be a digital. So she created that YouTube, and honestly, fantastic content. I know I'm not deviating here, but just the name came up, and I was watching yesterday, and I thought anybody that loves Roses FC or the NSL, definitely recommendation. I think she's very transparent. She's very honest. Anyways, back to midfielders.
But no, but like 100%, because, and again, this is a thing across all of women's sports. Women's athletes are so much better at using social media than men's athletes, and it's not even close. It's not even close. They're better at giving insights into their lives, into the life of an athlete. They're better at showing behind the scenes stuff. Sorry, they're better at just communicating with the public. I don't know. I mean, honestly, for the most part, I feel like, and again, this is also shown through hockey, but also through soccer. Given that in North America, the main pathway through professional sports is through university. I'm talking about like doing all your university. Like a lot of the players that go play NCAA in women's sports graduate and then play professional, right? You look at Lucy Capitana and Julia Lease, they both, in their mid-20s, they graduated and then they went professional. They come into professional sports as fully formed human beings, right? And, they don't get thrown into pro sports at 18 years old and they have no idea and their only personality is just sports.
Yeah.
Right. You look at women's athletes across, and again, even with the girls I coach, they have just, they have a personality outside of sports, and that shines through, when they say like, hey, this is the day in my life as a professional athlete. Yeah, obviously there's sports in there, but you can see them actually have personalities. And I feel like for a lot of male athletes, a lot of people in men's sports in general, their job is, I am an athlete. I have tunnel vision on that. And every single thing that I talk about is sports. And it's just like, I feel like just, I've seen a bunch of TikToks. I've seen a bunch of videos about NSL players and just like the behind the scenes stuff. And it's much more personable because they can like communicate so much more effectively. And I think that's cool that, Montreal has also some players like that, because again, that's also how you grow the game, is you have charismatic and interesting personalities that you want to learn more about. So yeah, Chloe Minas for sure. But on the field, I think, which is what we're talking about, Chloe Minas, I think, was the most important addition this season. right? Cherim Kang was super important as well. We're talking about her in a bit, but Chloe Mina stepping into that midfield completely changed it.
Yeah.
I think she, for the most part, forced this formation change because you cannot have Chloe Minas come off the bench. She's too good. And so she now forced Robert Rosatoy to go, okay, I need 3 midfielders on the field. And, I think for better or for worse, it forced his hand to play a formation that he does not have the squad for. Because you look at Ali Hess, and I think she probably benefited the most of playing with Chloe Minas because it took a lot of the playmaking off of her plate and let her focus on being the engine and let her focus on being the physically dominant presence in the midfield that she was. We saw in the end of the season. And I think the biggest, person that kind of lost out on it was Charlotte Bilbao. Yeah. Because and again, this is not necessarily because of Chloe Minas arriving. I just think throughout the season, she lost a step gradually. And I think she started to show a bit of her age towards the end, because by the time the end of the season hit, this is not just the playoffs. In that last run of 7 games in a row without a win, she was a shadow of the composed and metronomic midfielder we saw at the beginning of the
season. She was non-existent. She was non-impactful. She did nothing to help the team.
So you look at that midfield three, which was the starting midfield for basically from the time Chloe Minas got there until the end of the season. And you look at Chloe Minas and Ali Hess up their game, and I feel like Charlotte Bilbao took a step back. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm, and here's the predicament now, because Charlotte Bilbao is a verifiable legend of French soccer and women's soccer in general. And so you cannot justify having someone of her stature come off the bench. But in terms of just pure footballing quality, I think that's what it needs right now. I think that's what the team needs, is having Charlotte Bilbao come off the bench, because I don't see her as a starter next year. Based on again, not just the playoffs, but the last almost 2 months of the season, she was the weakest of the 3 midfielders.
In the field, even. I mean, it was significant how I don't understand why either they kept it. I didn't understand Robert Rosatoy's decision to play her out of position. And I'm not saying that because I think there's somebody better necessarily, but it was very clear. You can watch the tape 2-3 times of those games where she was being played up high in the field. She is clearly forced. Elias, she looked like me when I'm trying to chase the ball, and I'm very out of shape. I'm her age. I'm older than her, and I run that way. And I run that way when I'm forcing myself to run. Like, it just seemed forced, and it didn't seem like she was comfortable. Now you made a comparison of her to another player, a CF Montreal player, last week, and that was actually, I think it clicked something for me in my mind when you said that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the case of Victor Wanyama.
Absolutely.
And when you were just talking about 2 seconds ago about Charlotte Bilbao, you were saying an international player, well recognized, that doesn't justify her playing, doesn't justify, and she has to be in the bench. We were talking about Victor Wanyama with CF Montreal in his last year, in his last season. There's nothing, and unfortunately, he left the team in not the greatest of moments. But we're seeing a Charlotte Bilbao that got her option picked up today. So they want her back.
I would have been shocked if she didn't have her contract. Let's be honest here, right? Like, even if performances were not good, Marine Pichon recruited her specifically. They have a long history together. They've been joined at the hip, footballing wise, for a while now. I'm not surprised that she picked up the option. I'm saying the best Charlotte Bilbao right now is a Charlotte Bilbao that you're going to get for half an hour. Because that way you can manage her minutes and make sure that you get the same level of Charlotte Bilbao all season. Because she played 90 minutes every single week without fail up until the end of the season, and it showed. It absolutely showed.
Yeah. And her frustration was evident towards the end of the season. You could see. Elias, I think this is just human, right? Like, you know that she's probably used to playing at a different level, and for herself, not the field, but herself. Like, she's probably used to being more impactful during a game than she had been the past months with Roses FC, and she was clearly getting frustrated. Look, in the season she had 23 starts, 2 goals and 2 assists with 19 shots. She took a lot of shots. I wasn't necessarily a fan of her taking shots on goal. I did hear that in practice she was one of the best ones of the whole team, but it didn't translate well into the game. Ali Hess, you mentioned it, a very physical midfielder. I really liked her game going up, how she used her body. Chloe Minas did talk about in one of her videos when she was comparing Sweden to the NSL, how Sweden is actually, she found that the game in Sweden was a lot more physical than say the NSL, but in the NSL they called
It's
more
also because
fouls.
everyone's 6 feet tall in Sweden. Like
Exactly.
they're all Vikings.
But you know, but you know, it's funny. It's that maybe that kind of like made her create her game differently to get ready for the NSL, because she was facing big midfielders as well. And Chloe Minas had such an interesting
Yeah, I
way.
mean, you look at her play and just she's like what 5'2", 5'3", but she doesn't get knocked off the ball easy, right? She's got a low center of gravity, and like when she's on the ball, she doesn't get pushed off it very easily. So again, yeah, Sweden for sure probably helped, but she's also just naturally a well-built midfielder that has like a strong lower body, and there's a reason why she's also taking the free kicks, right? Because she's got power there.
Yeah, and honestly, she's 23 years old. I think if she has a full off season here in Montreal, back home, it could actually be very,
So
very
good.
important. And when we're talking, especially because I think it's important for the club to start feeding more players to the national team, right? And we want players like Chloe Minas at 23 years old having those minutes with the national team, and maybe because I know she played at the youth level as well, and for Quebec as well, for Team Quebec. So I think she's going to be another position we're going to keep a close eye on, but it's going to be the Charlotte Bibeau profile that is also going to raise a lot of questions next year, lies as to, I mean, she's going to hit 36 years old. She's not getting any younger. Ali Hess also, she's 30 years old. So what I want to see next year, Lies, is I want to see Chloe Minas and Ali Hess lined up next to each other. That's what I want to see. Last one I wanted to talk before we move on to the
got
attack.
A question from Wally though. What midfielder profile is missing on this roster? Is it still an offensive one? Yes. The midfield profile missing is Cherim Kang.
Yeah, Elias has a different agenda. No,
yes, no, it's someone that can break lines by herself. It's someone that if you're getting bogged down and you can't really develop from the defense into the attack, it's someone who can drop deep, pick the ball up, and if they need to do it themselves, they do it themselves. If you have Cherim Kang and Chloe Minas in confined spaces together, nobody's getting the ball off them. You're not getting the ball off them. That's a fact, right? And then you have Ali Hess there, who can also who has, again, playmaking wise, has a lot taken off her plate and lets her focus on doing what she does best. That midfield three, I have absolutely no problem with it. I cannot think of a better midfield three, on the team right now. It's perfect for me.
Yeah, I think if they are missing an offensive power, I think they need a midfielder, creative midfield, and we talked about this. A creative midfield. We talked about it early on in the season before Cherim Kang joined the team. You kept saying it, Elias. You were like, they're missing that offensive profile. They're missing that offensive profile, the one that feeds Latif Abdou, the one that can feed the wingers. Because right now, Charlotte Bibeau wasn't doing it. Ali Hess wasn't doing it. They could transition the ball upwards, but they're not the ones that are going to distribute the ball. Chloe Minas, I don't know if she's a distributor. I couldn't really tell. We talked about it here. She's great in duels.
She's fantastic in the link-up play, though. Yeah. Right? And I think that's what you need, like a relayeur de ballon, someone who can drop deep, pick up the ball, and then transition into the attack. I think she's going to be so good. But again, if the whole objective was to find Charlotte Bibeau on a half turn, who's playing further up the field now, and she couldn't, make her own space. It was extremely difficult for her in the later stage of the season. So I think you need somebody who's just a bit more dynamic, and that is Cherim Kang. I'm gonna keep propping it until the day I die. But Cherim Kang for number 10.
I like Cherim Kang as a winger. I'm not gonna put her as a 10. One last player before we move on to attackers to talk about Cherim Kang as an attacker, not a midfielder, is Felicia Raw, who is the youngest midfielder there. She's 19 years old. Started 7 games. She had 2 assists, 4 shots, 40 tackles. Personally, I'm a little bit surprised that they're bringing back Felicia Raw, because I found, especially towards the latter part of the season, she didn't impact the field much. She didn't do much. I felt like at times the game seemed to be revolving around her, and she seemed to be a beat slower than everybody. And I was like, and now when I saw her age, obviously she's a youngster. I think Elias, she's the kind of player that might need a loan maybe to another league or somewhere where she has more minutes, where she can kind of catch up to speed, because it just seems, I'm not saying she's not good or that she doesn't have the potential, but at least when she was playing in the NSL and in very important games, she seemed to be a bit slower to me, a bit like she struggled a bit to catch up with the speed of the game. What do you think of Felicia Roa's performance?
Here's the predicament. You put her, let's say you loan her out to like a League One team, right? I mean, and she's going to become instantly going to be the best player in League One. Instantly, she was the captain of CF Montreal Academy when they walked over everybody and they were smacking teams up for fun. And I think she's going to be 19, turning 20 next season. I think this is again a great learning experience for her because of just the quality and the breadth of experience that surrounds her. I'm okay if she again plays. She played 7 games. She had 7 appearances last year. She had 3 starts, if I'm not mistaken.
7 starts.
7 starts, and then a bunch more. Substitute appearances. I wouldn't mind if that number goes up incrementally, because again, she's 19 years old. I think that alone, you're not going to be able to loan her to an NWSL team, right? And if you want to keep a close eye on her, you can't loan her internationally. I mean, like off the continent. You're not going to loan her to Mexico. You can't loan her to Europe or wherever like that. The next option is a loan to a League One team. That's not good for her, right? She's not going to develop. So she's going to get more minutes, and she'll probably get in better shape, and she'll probably stay match fit, for sure. But in terms of growing as a player for a 20-year-old, that's not what's needed. I think you surround her with people like Charlotte Bibo and Ali Hess. You surround her with people like Chloe Minas, who again is closer to her age and playing at an elite level, and it's going to bring out the best in her. But I think that she needs more minutes, because again, you put her on the field for 10 minutes. Yeah, maybe you get a bit more comfortable with the speed of the game, but you're not going to learn. And 7 starts is nice, but if the starts are spread out, you start once every 2 or 3 weeks, you don't develop any kind of rhythm.
Yeah, but she also had more starts than Chloe Minas. She had
Chloe Minas was there for 2 months. Chloe Minas at the start of the season, she's got 20 starts, right? Let's be honest here.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So I don't think that I think that Felicia Roy needs the amount of minutes she's getting, but I think it's also important to have her gradually integrated into the league, because she's shown up. I agree with you, right? There are a bunch of moments where it looked like she was more than a step behind, and she was kind of just overwhelmed with the physical and just the pure speed of the league. You're 100% right, but there are also some really good moments from her. And so I think you add the same kind of workload next season, and those moments where she seems overwhelmed or she seems out of her depth are going to drop again. So, if you're expecting someone to explode right away and just get with the program immediately, that's not always going to be the case, right? Because you have a bunch of players who popped up with their first professional contract, especially the defenders, that took to the league perfectly and adapted right away and really didn't have a bad game up until the playoffs. And then some other people need maybe a year. But I think that Felicia Roy has every tool she needs to become a really solid midfielder. And again, I expect her to take a step forward, right? Not just in her physical development, but also in her tactical understanding of the team, her technical evolution, everything. So I think across the board, if she can, again, take conservatively just one step forward, she's going to become an even more reliable substitute. And she's going to get, she's not going to get 5 minutes at the end of the game. She's going to get 20 or 30 minutes, and then she's going to have an even more prominent role. And I think that's what's best for her.
I think a lot of these players that we talked about in the midfield, defense, fullback, wingback, whatever, that we're like about, like we're talking about Jodie Smith, Anna Karpenko right now. We're talking about Felicia Roy. These are the kind of players that starting next season, if halfway through the season, or even maybe 10 games into a season, whatever amount of minutes they get, because now you're going to have a full off season and one whole season that you already played with the Roses FC. Absolutely. The patience is running thin. because
absolutely.
so
I'm
I'm not
more
talking about
inclined to
Ali
give
Hes.
her. I'm more inclined to give Felicia Roy a bit more time because she's still a teenager. But Anna Karpenko and Jody Smith and people of that standing, right? 100%, I agree with you. And there's going to be even more in the forwards when we talk about them. But I 100% agree with you, right? Like you have a lot of these girls had 2-year contracts. Tanya Boychuk talked about, which is nice because it's a show of confidence. And if you're not good the first year, you're gone. No, like you have 2-year contracts, you have that stability. But that second year, it's your contract. You have to give me a good reason why I should offer you a new one. Haley Whitaker, by the way, was offered a new contract, right? She had a 1-year contract and she re-signed a new contract. So I think that, and they talked about it at the press conference, right? Like there was, it's about giving people votes of confidence. So I think that, that's really important for the second season, but you don't give votes of confidence for free for no reason.
Yeah,
You
but it's
still have to
also,
earn it.
let's talk about that, because we can talk about vote of confidence, but we also have to talk about a standard. Roses FC needs to have a standard. And when we talk about standard, we're not talking about, like, okay, well, she's good, so we're going to keep her. No, we're talking about, we only have this level of player at this level of play, and if we're going to pay, if they're going to come from Europe, they're going to be at the level of player Shireen Kang. We're not going to have a Charlotte Bibo that is declining in her play. We need to have players at the top of their form that are here and hungry to prove themselves, right? That respect the NSL and respect the league and respect Rose FC. So yes, you're right, Felicia Roy, you can give her a little bit of break because of her age, but at the end of the day, again, when we talk about the national team and feeding the national team, 19-year-old midfielder playing for her first professional team, this is the perfect scenario for Rose FC to feed a player like Felicia Roy to the national team. And especially with the World Cup in 2027, for Women's World Cup, this is the kind of profile that you want to display, to be in full display, and have Rose FC be able to kind of show off. Let's talk about the attackers. The attacking side of the Rose FC was one that saw the most drastic change, which when I say change, I think I'm putting it nicely. As far as productivity, Elias, and players throughout the season. When they were good, Elias, they were very good.
They were
But
untouchable.
when they were bad, they were very bad.
They were unwatchable.
What's your take on the attack overall?
I think you summed it up really well. It was way too inconsistent and way too generous to other teams, right? Whether it was looking for an extra pass when you should have shot, or whether it was letting other teams off the hook when you finally created your good chance and you put it wide, or you put it right at the goalie, they were way too kind. And they let other teams off the hook way too much. And Marine Pichon made a joke about XG, but yeah. I mean, I don't think XG was tracked this season, or I don't think it was tracked very, very closely, but they would have had the worst XG, or like among the worst XG to goal conversion ratios for sure. Right. And this is a team that scored more than 3 goals a handful of times, 3 goals or more a handful of times. And this is a team that often won, a 1-goal game. They won 2-0, or they won 1-0, or they won 2-1, maybe they won like a 3-2. But again, this is a team that won mainly based off their defense and their ability to kind of close out games. But when you have people like Tanya Boychuk and you have Charam Kang and even Claire Monnier, who for a bit was in good form, the fact that they were so inefficient in front of goal is unacceptable to me. And Marine Pichon said it plain as day. We need a proper poacher. We need a proper fox in the box. And again, it's not a shot at Tanya Boychuk, because again, she was the best attacker of the season, if you don't count Latif Abdou. But you need someone whose only focus is finishing chances. Tanya Boychuk drifted out wide, dropped deep to help build up the attack. She's much more of an all-around forward than she is a pure striker. You need a pure striker, right? Someone who picks up the ball inside 20 meters, and the first thought is, how can I get a shot on net? And then maybe I'll pass the ball. But no, you need someone who has that level of just pure execution. And I talked about at the top of the show. It's ruthless consistency. Someone who gets 4 or 5 shots a game. Someone who gets under the defensive skin. Someone who's physically dominant and who again. Esther Okawonko is what comes to mind when you talk about a dominant attacking force because of the fact that even if she wasn't leading scorer, she always had to be taken care of.
She did everything on the field.
Exactly.
Forget scoring goals, Elias. There are stats that are not even on the stat sheets
Like
on NSL of what she did.
her hold up play, her combination play, but more specifically the work she does in the penalty area is so important. And so yeah, Wally, talking about they have a designated player spot, and do we know if the Rose is used in 2025? Will they have one in 2026? If not, they must use a striker. I don't know what Charlotte Bilbao's standing was. Maybe if anyone was going to get a DP spot on that team, it was going to be Charlotte Bilbao. I don't know if she did.
They didn't use one. They didn't use the DP spot, and that's something that's going to have to be addressed this offseason.
But next year, yeah, this is coming off season, right? Forwards are usually what you spend your designated player spots on. That is your big ticket item. You go out there and you get a proper striker who can bag you, 15 goals a season. Then all of a sudden this team is completely different, right? And it gives you so many more options. Where are you playing Tanya Boychuk? Where are you playing Churin Kang? You're taking a lot of pressure off Claire Monnier, who comes off the bench. You're taking a lot of pressure off Numi Paquet, who finally, hit her stride and then got hurt. Super unlucky. But you're taking all this pressure off of all these players who can now focus on doing their thing. Because you have a lot of chance creators and you have no finisher on the field. Because you look at the front three by the end of the season, it's Tanya Boychuk, Churin Kang, Numi Paquet, right? All three of them are not pure finishers. They're chance creators. They're very good one-on-one. They're very good in tight spaces. They're very good at combining and creating chances. Well, there's no finisher on the team. And it showed because they scored. Their conversion was, again, very weak.
Yeah. And look, and when we look at the list of the attackers for Rose FC, we had Tanya Boychuk at 25 years old. We had Noémie Paquin at 24, Jarim Kang at 27, Claire Magnard at 25, and Laurie Thibault at 25 years old. These are not youngsters. These are not players that are necessarily, as we mentioned with Felicia Roy, with big. Now, obviously, in this list, there are some attackers that are there, but that they didn't necessarily play or had very, very little minutes that we can't do a fair evaluation on them. But I think, look, when we were doing the live feed while we were watching the game, Elias, one of the things that we saw from the attack was that there was no real accountability between anybody. The only one that, and I rewatched the game, Elias, because I'm a psychopath. I rewatched that game, and the only person that seemed to have any kind of rush, like any kind of not rush, but to have that sense of urgency to do something offensively was Tanya Boychuk. But Tanya Boychuk can't do it by herself. She did it to almost the expense of her getting suspended because she was on a yellow card and she continued being aggressive, playing a little bit with the goalie. But at that point, I'm sure anybody, not just Tanya Boychuk, doesn't really give a fuck. I'm sorry, but they want to do something to wake up the team. But if Tanya Boychuk isn't there because she's injured, a Noémie Paquin isn't there because she's injured, a Shairim Kang is not there because of whatever, she's injured. Who do you have? Claire Magnard had some fantastic moments at the beginning of the season. We said on this show, we love the how she pressed high and all that, and how much she seemed to destabilize the defenders. But truth be told, once it seemed like they changed it because Latif Abdul left, it seems like Claire Magnard, they asked a lot.
She can't play lone striker. She can't play as a lone striker.
And Marinette Pichon, you said it yourself in the press conference. We'll talk about it a little bit later because she did. I felt like she dropped a bunch of nuggets in this press conference. Is that she said, I think she even cut off Robert at some point with Coach Robert, where she said, we need a striker. And she looked at Tanya Boychuk and said, I still love you, though. She said,
but it's true, right? Because Tanya Boychuk can play off a striker, right? When her and Paquin were up top together, before Abdul switched into the middle, she was doing great because she had somebody to play off of. You ask her to play alone up top, and it's just a lot of running, and she doesn't really get to be as impactful.
Yeah. So Tanya Boychuk needs help. I think she needs somebody to play with. Now, Noémie Paquin, she's a fantastic winger with high potential. I think she's tremendous potential if she can stay healthy. I even really liked what she did against Toronto. but Toronto did a fantastic job of taking her off her game.
In
She
that
took
first leg, she was
Shaheen.
excellent. That first half, she was excellent.
Yeah, they took, but Toronto also took Shaheen Kang and Noemi Paquin off their game by essentially eliminating the flanks completely from the wingbacks and fullbacks. But when those two are on their game, they are something to watch. They are very, very like impressive how they can do. But Shaheen Kang, I know that she also took a little bit. I mean, she scored 3 goals, but then she kind of also it's her productivity slowed down a lot more. I mean, her intensity is incomparable. I think she's a fantastic player to high press, but truth of the matter is she started 10 games and scored 3 goals on 18 shots, Now, something that a stat that stood out to me about Tanya Boychuk was that she also had 27 offsides, which kind of shows that either she was not on the same page with her midfielders or her midfielders not on the same page, did not really understand her game. And these offsides, I have to say, actually happened as the responsibilities were bigger on her once Latifa Abdou left the team. Yeah. She still scored 7 goals. She was the leading striker with 4 assists. But yeah, it just
honestly 25 offsides in 23 games. I don't hate that.
27 offsides in 22 games, but
that's not that bad.
Yeah.
If we're talking about like upwards of caught offside twice a game, then it's a problem. We're talking about like 1.1 offsides a game, right?
Yeah, but those offsides came later in the season when she was.
I know, but for me, someone who gets offside even once or twice a game, it just shows me a striker that's trying stuff, right? If a striker's caught offside more than twice a game consistently, like every single game, then yeah, it's a bit problematic and it has to be addressed. But if it's a striker, if she gets 1 or 2 offsides a game, I think it shows more a striker who's making the runs, because forwards shouldn't be afraid of getting caught offside. It should be a natural byproduct of being a forward who's making runs in. And if you're a team that plays in transition and who really likes to hit back quickly, like Montreal did towards the end of the season, or tried to, that's just that comes with the territory. So yeah, obviously you never want to be caught offside, but I much rather a striker have 1 or 2 offsides than 0, because it means they didn't really.
I understand what you're saying, but to me, the reason why I saw it as such a negative was because of when it came, and it showed kind of the dysfunction that was going on with her, with those around her, and it showed especially in the Toronto series where she was clearly very frustrated and was pretty much said, "I'm going rogue." She pulled a Matias Cócaro. She said, "You know what?
Okay, let's not get crazy. Let's
go, baby.
Let's not start saying
nonsensical things."
There's going rogue, and then there's Matias Cócaro, which is like in a different stratosphere,
different league of his own.
Yeah, like there's levels to this shit, right? Like,
no, but Matias Cócaro went rogue, and like when they were winning, and at least Tanya Boychuk had a decent reason why she did it. But one player that I don't understand why she would be back unless she has an amazing offseason and does something to completely shut my mouth is Laurie Thibault. The few times I saw her, she had 1 goal and 2 assists in the season, but Elias, I'm sorry, I don't like her game. I found that there were a lot of moments where she did not complete a run, or she did not pass the like there were just too many gaps in her game that
there were a lot of difficult moments. Yes.
And so that's a player that either you're going to bring in 3 players that are much better than her or have higher potential than her, and maybe, I don't know, release her from her contract, or like I said, she comes back next year, shuts my mouth, and I'm dumb and I don't know what I'm talking about, and she has a standout season. But beyond that, I don't understand what she's doing with Roses FC next season.
Because I mean, she didn't really get the chance to show all that much, and whenever she was on, it wasn't impactful, right? So again, one of the mainstays of this group is that a lot of 2-year contracts. So this time next year, this little list of like, thank you for your service, good luck, thank you for your service, good luck, could be a lot longer depending on how the season goes. So let's just say the contract renewal department has a very busy 2026 ahead of them.
That's very interesting. And the same thing with Claire Magnard, okay? Because Claire Magnard, like I told you, showed 1 phase of the game. But to be very fair to the attackers, I do think that if we're talking about today, Elias, after the whole season, it's very hard to define what their identity is. We talked about it in the last show, in the live show, when I asked Marinette Pichon what was one of her learning lessons of this season. She told me was the fact that we actually don't really. She thought that the Roses FC had an identity at the beginning of the season, but they actually didn't. And at the end of the season, it still feels like they had no identity. But yeah, so that's something that the attack is going to have to find themselves. I almost want to delve into the Latif Abdou impact because, like it or not, Elias, and they talk about it. I know they talked about it. They asked Marine Pichon today in the press conference. Latif Abdou was part of the winning squad for the first NSL championship. So she left Rose FC for our winning team. Yeah, and I think Rose FC not only got eliminated from the playoffs, but they saw one of their best players go on to win to another team. Elias, we talked about it. We had so many questions, much more questions than answers when she left. I'm still confused about it. I don't feel like Marine Pichon really cleared the air in the press conference either about it.
And I don't think we're ever going to get a clear air. She said she didn't regret the way it went down. Yeah, I mean, I also don't think you can say like, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I regret it," like just naturally. And I think that's honestly going to be the end of it because I don't think they want to talk about it anymore. I think both parties kind of want to move on, which again, I can't blame them for it. What happened. But now you kind of have to put up or shut up because you willingly said goodbye to your best player who was, scoring the majority of your goals, and now you have to deliver on the season right after she won the title. So I think now it's kind of like, you have to show your ex that you're doing better than them by finding a new partner and like, look how good I'm doing. Yay.
Yeah, so, you got it this time, but we'll get 3 more. Something like that. But I mean, look, like Marine Pichon, here the ball is wrong. We wish nothing but the best for Latif Abdou, but at the end of the day, it's still like a little bit bitter, because she was one of us. She was she was the part of the Rose FC, and she was well liked by the fans. She was well liked by the fans here, and I think it blindsided everybody with the news that she wanted to leave the team. But at the same time, as I mentioned, the attack didn't really have an identity, and maybe that's something that Latifa saw, that it didn't really have an identity, or maybe that she didn't like the style it played. It didn't go for her game. I think maybe it requires a lot more of a defensive load. Robert Rotsatoy from the forward, and that's maybe something that Latif Abdou didn't necessarily like in that game. I think with Vancouver, she was allowed to play a lot more offensively and less focused on the defensive end of it because they have fantastic defenders. But he also did drop a few nuggets that Filippo, if I'm saying her name right, Robert Rotsatoy.
Yeah, they wanted Jesse Filippo, and she picked Vancouver.
Yeah, and now she's a champion.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it happens, right? You can't get every highly
Jessica
rated
Filippo.
player. Just Di Filippo. Yeah, I mean, she's a fantastic player, and again, it's the nature of professional sports. You're not going to get every top player that you want. That's just it happens. But yeah, maybe the Vancouver project was more interesting to her. But yeah, you get to play alongside Quinn. That's kind of a good offer as a midfielder. It's tough to say no to that. So
look, Vancouver won it fair and square, and they were very a team that fought their way in. I mean, Rose FC also lost it very fair and square. Toronto. I was actually surprised. I was in Toronto when the NSL game was happening for other reasons, but I was surprised that they turned it around. The Vancouver fully deserved it. Toronto, all fairly beat Rose FC in the playoffs, and they were very, very good at it. But yeah, it's something that's gonna make this offseason very, very interesting. Look, that sums it up for the player, the position evaluation. Now we're gonna talk about the season more in a global aspect of it. If you were to give Rose FC a grade this season, what would it be?
A letter or out of 10?
A letter. Let's just do a letter. A, B, C, D, E, F. You know what? I'll give you some time to think because I do have the letter in my head. I want to give Rose FC a C. And I'll tell you why. And I want you to explain your grade why. I want to give them a C because I felt like they stayed afloat throughout the season. They managed to stay afloat. They managed to stay relevant, and they still qualified for the playoffs, which is a plus. But what makes me almost give him a D, but I'm gonna be very fair and give him a C because I'm Mr. Positive.
D is crazy. They still made the playoffs. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, but it's just that they didn't react well to any change that happened with them. Be it a player left, be it a player injured. Robert Russell and his staff and the players were not able to react quickly enough and adapt to change quickly enough to make them a better team every time a change was. Yes, you can say like it was the first season, we're all learning and all that. Yes, but I will give them a C just because of that, because they weren't able to react. And next season, they need to challenge themselves to be able to ask themselves, what is the worst case scenario that could happen this season? That this person is out, this person. What is plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G to be able to survive that situation? Which is, I don't think it's something that they really thought about at the beginning of the season for 2025, which is why I would give them a C. What about you?
I'm giving them a B, purely for the reason that I think they put together a really solid squad at the beginning of the season. And I think that, Zervatron saying B minus. Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to give a straight up a B. But I think it's more just, they put together a really solid squad. And then again, injuries for better, for worse, did make life extremely difficult. When you don't have the depth necessary, the necessary depth, and then you also get starters that are injured, you're just not going to be playing at the right level, right? Nomi Paquin getting hurt, Tanya Boychuk getting hurt, Julia Lease getting hurt, Julie Smith getting hurt, right there. That's 4 vital players, whether starters or very important depth pieces that are not available to you, or coming back from injury. You have Ali Hesta had a knock. You have you have Jesus, wow, English.
It's a Tuesday, baby.
Gabriel Lambert that had a knock, right?
Yeah.
So again, these are all players that are very important pieces of competition, and just depth that are not available to you, and all of a sudden you've got yourself kind of reaching deeper and deeper into your bags of substitutes to make stuff work. And so yeah, I think I'll give them a B, because I think it's also important to remember they did make the playoffs, and they did up until that last game, because that first leg against Toronto was a good game, right? I think we often, with just how bad the second leg was, we forget that Montreal was at their level in the first leg. And again, the finishing, we'll talk about the finishing until we're blue in the face. The finishing was the only reason it ended 2-0, right? They could have very easily tied, if not won, that game. But again, the elephant in the room. So I'll give them a B, because they put themselves in a good position. And even when things were bad, they did not get blown out, right? Those last games of the season, right? They were still close games. They were still competitive games. And even when things were at their worst, they're still competitive with Vancouver, competitive with Ottawa, competitive with Toronto. So I think that for that reason, and also with the fact that their summer transfer window was fantastic. You bring in Chloe Minas and Cherim Kang. I give you an A for your transfer window.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I give them a B.
Yeah. All right. So next up, we have, if you were to give Robert Russell-Toyu a grade this season, what would it be? And I'll give you a second to think about it. I want to give Robert Russell-Toyu a C as well. Because I think that he managed to keep that locker room together despite all the changes and tough moments that we're having. I think he found a way to respect, gain the respect of his staff and his team. But what makes me a little bit concerned was that during the bad moments we saw, and when we were watching the game live, Elias, Rose FC was down 6-1 at that point. It was like the 70th minute, and you didn't see a very fired up, say, Robert. Now, I'm not saying that I want a coach that's rah rah rah. That's not good to see either. But you definitely want to see a coach that kind of reads the situation and reacts a certain way. I think the most angry I saw Robert Russell-Toyu this season was when one of his staff got a red card. He was angry at the line judge for it. That's the angriest I saw him. But I felt that he was too passive at moments when this team needed somebody that had a little bit more fire. I also felt that some of his substitutions and lineup selections were kind of questionable. I think he stuck to his ideas for too long at times when obviously there needed to be a change, whether we're talking about starting players or tactics that were being used. He defended through and through, and he wasn't very flexible in that sense. But again, he seems to be a player's coach. He seems to understand his players. He's the kind of coach, Elias, that you want to have in an inaugural season. Somewhere that someone that knows the city, someone that is going to make his players feel safe, and somebody. But when it comes to taking the team to the next level, that's where you want to see that player, again, that coach that is unafraid to bench a Charlot Bibot because clearly is not working. Someone that is not afraid to bench a Megan Sauvé when she is having clearly a terrible game, or somebody that is not just a coach that can coach through every situation, not just the good times, So that's why I will give him a C. Next season, I think he has to start on the hot seat because, especially the way the season ended, I think he needs to prove that this was just a bad season filled with bad luck, especially towards the end, and that he can coach a better team given better players, which is what Marinette Pichon is saying is going to happen this offseason. What grade would you give Robert Russell?
I give him a C+ because I do agree with you on a lot of things. I do think he should be. I would like to see him be a bit more flexible. I also would like to see him, and this is a problem I have with a lot of. Again, I understand, but it's a problem I have with a lot of coaches is that they take a beat too long before they make any kind of significant decision. Trust your gut. There's a reason that you've been put in this position, and there's a reason that you've been entrusted with this team. Is because whoever makes a decision says, I trust you with the squad and I trust you to make the right decisions. Go with your gut. You think you need a change to be made, make it right away. Right. And again, you could talk about the last game of the season, but I think if we're not going to talk about the last game of the season for the players, then we're not going to talk about the last game of the season for the coach too, because nobody did well. Right. Let's call a spade here. But throughout the season, a bunch of times, whether it was a substitution or a minor adjustment, it would always happen, not always, but sometimes it would happen a bit too late for my liking. And the worst part is he would make the change. So I know that he sees it. I know that he sees the problem, or I know that he sees the solution, right? So I know for a fact that he has the footballing knowledge to make the right decisions. Trust your gut, man. If you have to make a substitution at halftime, make the. If you have to take a substitution even earlier, make it. If it'll put you in the right position, I don't care what other people. I don't care about perception, what other people think. If it puts you in the right spot, make it. Because by the time he made it, sometimes maybe it had a good effect, but in terms of affecting the outcome of the game, it was too late. Because either the inertia had set in, or the team had scored another goal, or whatever. Right. So that's the one thing I want to see from him. I want to see improve from him is just his not his decision making, is his almost like his self-confidence, Yeah. Because he makes the right calls. But sometimes he's just like, let me wait a little bit. No, and again, every coach is guilty of it. Yeah. Because when you make a big swing, it's a big swing. Could also go the other way and make things even worse. So
that's what I'm saying. When you're a player's coach, you don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to offend any of your players.
And again, this is also his first pro setup, right? He coached semi-pro, he coached university. This is his first time coaching pro, right? Sometimes these are grown-ass adults. These are professionals.
Yeah.
Right? And Marinette Pichon talked about it, the mentality, the understanding that you are a professional athlete now. If you get taken off at halftime, it's not a personal slight. It's, I need to make this change because I think this will be best for the outcome of the game. And he needs to kind of, throw your weight around a bit. So I give him a C+.
Yeah, and then the last one that I want to give a grade. If you were to give Marinette Pichon a grade this season, what would it be and why? I'll start. I want to give Marinette Pichon a C-, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like, and again, it's an inaugural season. We don't know how difficult it was to be sold. When we talked to the players, they seemed like they were thrilled at the idea that Marinette Pichon was calling them when she was and talking to their agent. But it does feel like, especially after the Latif Abdul departure, because I'm sorry, but I am going to put the blame on her, because clearly something went wrong in the communication between player, agent, and Marinette Pichon. Maybe she sold her an idea that wasn't true. Maybe they couldn't come to an understanding as to what they wanted to. Clearly something went wrong there. And this is what makes the C-, because the Latif Abdul departure crumbled this team. It did. It took them a very long time to actually find a somewhat of a replacement with Shairin Kang and Noemi Paquin clicking on all wheels. But the squad that showed up on day one with Latif Abdul and Tani Boychuk and all those did it. When you look at it at the end of the season and you look back at it, you're like, why were these players signed? Why were these players? Was there a clear idea as to what they wanted to do from day one, or did they just kind of desperately get players that wanted to come back home? So it's a little bit as to what was the sales pitch. Was it clear what they were saying? Was there, so I want to give her a C-, but again, it's her first season, I think, as a sporting director, if I remember correctly. I'm sure she had her own growing pains, but it's going to be a huge offseason, Eliza. I do think you were mentioning a little bit later. I said we're going to talk about later, but the summer transfer window that she had, I think, was great. I think that the Chloe Minasha and Im Kang signings were actually great pickups. They weren't, I don't think they were major pickups in the women's soccer world, but I do think they were important for this team, and they were impactful right away. So this offseason is going to be one that I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on as to what kind of profile she's bringing in, and if they're actually really sold on the idea that they're not going to be leaving halfway through the season saying, you know what, I think I have other projects. It doesn't align with my vision anymore.
I'm going to give her a B-.
Nice. I'm the mean one today. Jesus.
Yeah, I know. You're always mean, Andy. You're always bullying me. I think if Latif Abdul, at the end of the season, Latif Abdul says, I'm not accepting, she asked for a trade or something, or she has to leave, even if they pick up her option, I'm giving her an A-. But the fact that she left mid-season knocks it off considerably. You look at the level of the player, and again, depth was a problem from the start.
Yes.
In the midfield and in the attack, right? Which is another reason it's not an A+. But you look at the quality of the starting 11 that she fielded on day one. You look at the quality of the 13 best players that she has, right? Again, health and fitness made everything a lot more difficult. We look at that level that is available to you. And then on top of that, you look at who she managed to bring in and how much they managed to affect change. All things considered, I think she did an excellent job at getting the right people in the right positions for a starting caliber team. But I think she also showed her inexperience because she did not build any depth. She was like, I need like 13 ballers, and she got them.
Yeah.
And then she's like, shit, I need like 20 people. I forgot.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is, where she has to do her learning as well. And she has to go like, okay, now I have to kind of understand roster construction as a global process and not just, I need like, a good starting 11 and then everything else will sort itself out. So I'll give her a B- because she did manage to field a really strong team. And it would have been even higher if there was no other nonsense and shenanigans and unfortunately depth issues.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I agree with that. I do think it's going to be an important off season. She also did mention in the press conference that Robert kept going up to her at certain points of the season, like, hey man, like the players I
can't do 11v11. What the hell is going on?
Don't really fit. They don't really fit with what I want to do, right? So there were discussions, and this is obviously we were not privy to what those discussions were, but it's obviously clearly something important that even bothered Robert Russell Toyu to the point that he had to face Marinette Pichon. All right, so let's talk about some of the roster decisions. We talked about a little bit, and we do have that screenshot that shows what exactly it was that Rose FC. So some of the contract options that were exercised, and this was something that was announced today, right? Charlotte Bibo is coming back. Anne-Marie Laroche, the third goalkeeper, and Julia Elias, as you mentioned. Haley Whitaker, as you mentioned earlier, got offered a new contract for 1 more year to remain with the team for 2026. And the departed have said are going to be Lara Schenk and Mathilde Lachance. These are decisions that were taken by Marine Pichon, and she kind of mentioned it in the press conference. She was like, "Oh yeah, just to let you know, you guys are going to see announcements later." But decision, I don't know if she kind of rushed the PR team or anything to right away release the decisions, because she kind of loosely said it in the press conference. These are decisions that are made. But what do you think of some of these decisions that were made?
I think these are all correct. Again, we don't really know the extent of what a third goalkeeper brings unless people talk about what the third goalkeeper brings. But again, on the field, their impact is invisible. So it's more just behind the scenes what Anne-Marie, what La Roche is bringing. And I think that, if they're going to go out of her way to pick up an option, then, I think she's doing an adequate job. Julia Lease, like I said, injury notwithstanding, she was an excellent addition and an excellent player. And Charlotte Bilbao, again, like I said, right, I would have been shocked if her option wasn't picked up. I would have been floored, because even if I think she shouldn't be a starter right now, she needs to be a part of this team. Her quality and her experience, invaluable. Haley Whitaker makes sense. She, again, for all the difficulties she had, she still showed a lot of really good stuff. And Lara Schenk, we talked about it. It's unfortunate, but when you're taking up an international spot and you're injured for 2/3 of the season, it's just the reality, right? It's basically the Roses version of Giacomo Vrioni. So it's unfortunate, maybe less hype, but same kind of impact on the roster and the availability. So it's unfortunate, and that's football. That's professional football. It's going to happen. The same thing's going to happen next year. There's going to be people that you love that are not there, and it's like,
I don't know how in this podcast, when we're talking mostly about Rose FC, we
still managed to get to Giacomo Vrioni.
Giacomo Vrioni, Matias Coccaro. Like, what are we doing out here, man? But look, I agree with what you're saying.
We're pissing ourselves off for the love of the game.
Drama, man. Baby, let's go. Anyways, what I do agree with everything that you said. However, the only one I was very shocked and surprised and taken aback that it happened was the new contract for Haley Whitaker. I don't understand it. I don't think she performed well enough to deserve a new one. I thought
a 1-year contract.
Yeah, but again, she was a starter. I'm not expecting her that they re-signed her for 1 year to be a backup. I highly doubt it. I don't want her to be a star. Okay, whoa. Let me watch my words. It's not that I don't want her as a starter. I just don't think she's done enough to merit a starting position, and they need a wingback/fullback that can do both, because that's what Robert Rossitoyu's scheme has shown us. Unless, again, they're changing it completely next year, but unless she's coming back as a backup or someone that is on thin ice next year, whether she has a starting spot or not, I don't really understand the new contract. Very disappointed at Lara Schenk. They didn't figure out a way to make it work with Lara Schenk. As you mentioned, they used the excuse of the international spot and all that, but I think she deserved another chance. I thought she was one of the better players in that fullback position. So you're picking Haley Whitaker over Lara Schenk. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that roster decision kind of is a question mark to me. But again, maybe next year, I'm an idiot. I know nothing, and it ends up being the greatest decision Roses FC made. As for the rest, not sure exactly what Anne-Marie Laroche brings, but I'm happy to see Julia Leas back. And Charlotte Bibo, she better be coming back as a backup. Now, I just quickly want to talk about the end of season press conference that was done today, Elias, because you were there. Just give me an overall thought. What were your thoughts on your impressions on the end of the season? It's the first one, right?
Yeah, I think that they did a good job of steering the conversation away from how disappointing the end of the season was, while also not ignoring it. Like, they admitted that there was stuff that needed to be improved, but it wasn't as doom and gloom as someone who just got thumped 6-1 over 2 legs would expect. Right? There was still a lot of positivity. There was still a lot of optimism. And it was a good balance of, patting yourself on the back for the things you accomplished, which is rightfully deserved, and also acknowledging, hey, there's serious improvements that need to be made in multiple phases of the game, which again is also absolutely warranted. So I think they did a good job of balancing both, which also kind of kept the journalists relatively honest in terms of not asking questions that are too negative versus not asking questions that are too positive. There's a healthy mix of both. So I think all around it was a very balanced press conference, which is, again, it's indicative of what is a relatively balanced season. There was a lot of good and a lot of less good. So I think that all of that kind of fits.
Yeah. I mean, look, I wasn't there, but based on what I heard, it did sound like kind of a tense environment where everybody kind of wanted to stay in the kumbaya circle. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's how it sounded to me. But I would have liked one of the things that they did mention, Elias, because they did kind of, I don't know if it was awkward. You were the one that was there, but they did ask her. Annie Larouche, I think they asked her, is Robert Russell-Toyu, can you confirm that Robert Russell-Toyu is back next season? I don't know if it was.
Oh, that was a joke. She said, as it was a joke. It was a joke.
Okay.
because no, like she started laughing, like it was obviously a bit. That's not a.
But anyways, he was confirmed.
It was a little bit awkward, but like it wasn't intended to be awkward. I think it was a joke that nobody expected, and I was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And then she started laughing. I was like, "Oh, okay." But no, I think it's
exactly. I don't know. Anyways, don't want to read more into it than it has to, but truth of the matter is he was confirmed that he's coming back in 2026. Yes. Elias, my question for you is he the right guy?
I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm going to say that he has earned the benefit of the doubt to be put back in the position next year. I was not blown away by him, but I also do think that I liked a lot of what I saw in terms of decision making, in terms of game management and adjustments. I've talked about my disdain for the 4-4-2 at length, right? We're not going to get back into it. But I do think that his adjustments in game, for the most part, were pretty solid. So I think he's done enough to earn next season, and I want to see him with a deeper squad and a much more complete squad.
Yeah. Look, if
I wanted him gone, I would have given him an F,
If we're talking about, I kind of mentioned it already, right? I think Robert Russell-Toyu starts on the hot seat next season. Has he done enough? Yes, he's kept the locker room together. The team isn't broken. I don't know how other NSL teams are doing, or those that didn't make the playoffs or lost or whatever. But I felt that he did a really good job of maintaining the locker room, and the girls seem to trust him. His team seems to trust him, which sometimes is more than a lot of other coaches can do with their team. But he starts in the hot seat for me. His decisions, as you mentioned earlier, need to be a lot more, I don't know what to say, professional. He just needs to trust himself in these decisions that are obvious to somebody that doesn't watch soccer 24/7, right? This player is not playing well, you take him out. He needs to teach his team accountability. And that accountability that we talked about, the lack of accountability between this team, it starts from the coach. The coach needs to know
when there's a lack of depth. Sometimes that also breeds a lack of accountability, right?
Yeah.
When there's nobody else on the field that's going to compete for your spot, then again, I'm not saying they got complacent, but I'm saying there is a lack of, like you said, accountability.
Yeah, and it starts with the coach. So hopefully everything trickles down from the coach up to the squad, up to the backups. But huge offseason, Elias. Huge offseason. Yep. So let's talk about it. We're gonna finish the segment with this. What do Roses FC need to do this offseason to have a successful 2026?
A proper poacher. At least one right back. If you bring in two and you bump Haley Whitaker up to winger, I don't hate that either. But at least one more right back. And another winger. And another winger, like a 1v1 specialist, a speed limit, someone, especially coming off the bench, someone that you could look to and say, I'm asking you to run for 15 minutes. Go and run for 15 minutes. And just cause chaos. Yeah, that's the three things I'd like them to bring in.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I do think that they need a proper 9, as someone that can dominate the game. because Tanya Boychuk needs help, and I think they need to revamp the flanks. I like the winger. I like what Jarim Cam brings. I like what Noemi Paquin brings in the winger. But as you mentioned, I think they need to also get younger players that bring potential. Not necessarily Canadian. They can be American. They can be European, whatever. But players that bring some potential, not that the level is gonna lower drastically. Those that can actually play those 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and be impactful in those minutes, and actually bother the veterans a little bit, bother those that have been a little there for a bit. I mean, like, hey, maybe my position's in a little bit of danger, right? This is what they need. They need to set a standard and bring up a little bit more competition within the squad. And they need to have an excellent offseason, Elias. I mean, it can't be one of those seasons where we don't know what the NSL is about. We don't know you guys know now. You guys played them each team 5 times this year. You know exactly what they bring next year. So they need to be better prepared. They need to have, as I mentioned earlier, plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E for every single situation that's going to happen. Okay, what if we fire Robert Rossitoyu within 5 weeks into the season, like another team in Montreal did? Well, what's plan B, plan C, plan D for that? You know, is there a coach lined up? Is there a Marco Donadel in the bench? Is there what is the plan? Do they maybe need to also increase the amount of staff in the bench? That I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Okay, it's been a long show, Elias. It's been very, very long, but we do need to talk about it, right? Because we already
one small piece of information.
We finished the Roses FC segment of it. We talked about their season. The postmortem is all over, but there was kind of big news. A little bit maybe that it might impact the world of soccer in North America as we know it, right? If you can just pop up there, Elias, what the decision was by the MLS. So Major League Soccer has announced a shift in its competition calendar, aligning the league schedule with the world's top soccer leagues. Very important, the world's top soccer leagues. Beginning in the summer of 2027, MLS will adopt a summer to spring season format, marking one of the most significant developments in the league's history. MLS is continuing to work with the MLS Players Association to finalize agreement on the transition plan. In conjunction with the transition, MLS will introduce a new regular season format that blends elements on the global game with North American sports tradition. The league will also review potential adjustments to the Audi MLS Cup playoffs format as part of an ongoing evaluation process, but has not yet finalized any changes. A lot of things said there, but very important things there, right? First things first, Elias, the schedule's changing for the MLS in 2027, in the summer of 27 to be specific. What are your first thoughts when you see that? We talked already about it a little bit in the show in the past. When it was just
that was rumors, my first thought.
When it was just rumors, we talked about it. It was just a rumor, but now it's real. Now it's very real. So what do you think? What
I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I think it's. I understand the rationale, and I think you're giving up way more than you're getting. And for that reason alone, I think you're putting yourself in a very awkward position in terms of growing the game, because you do not understand how little you've still managed to grow the game. I think Messi has inflated the league's sense of global positioning. I think they're competing with like the Belgian and the Dutch league in terms of international eyes when they're not. I think Messi's bringing it. I think Son and Mueller are bringing it. I think people like that are bringing individual eyes. But when you're talking about bringing eyes to the league as a whole, you're not doing what you think you're doing, or you're not there yet. And so what you're doing now is you're gambling it on aligning the transfer windows. So from a business perspective, maybe this is from business perspective, this is absolutely the right move in terms of transfer business, in terms of international transfer business, intercontinental transfer business. You've made the right decision, because now you're aligns with the Southern European schedule, right? Doesn't align with like Denmark and stuff like that, or like Russia, but it aligns with what is known as the top European leagues, quote unquote. What you are sacrificing is your North American viewership. You have the dog days of summer, right? You have June, July, August, where there is no football, there is no hockey, there is no basketball. All you have to compete with is soccer and NASCAR, is baseball and NASCAR. That's it in North America. And so instead of taking those 2 months to consolidate your viewership base and basically have competition-free, from a sports perspective, competition-free airways, you're now going, I want to line up with the NHL, I want to line up with the NFL, and I want to line up with the NBA. So the 3 most exciting North American sports competitions, when it comes to playoff action, you're now lining up your playoffs directly with them. You're in direct competition with the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, and the NFL. No, you're not. You're a bit after the NFL playoffs, but you're going to have your season play out during the Super Bowl, right? So all those things, right? The Super Bowl is in February. So the beginning of your season is going to interfere with that.
Kind of.
So you're doing all these things, and you're putting yourself in such a complicated position for no reason.
Yeah.
The only reason you're doing it is because you want your transfers overseas to be less inconvenient. That's it. I think that you are massively sacrificing your core viewership base for that one bit of convenience. Brazil has the same schedule that you do in terms of starts in the spring, ends in the winter, because they can't, that's their pattern, and they do just fine with international transfers. I think that this is incredible. Again, I could be sitting here in a year, I'll pull an Andy, I could be sitting here in a year being, I'm a fucking idiot, right? But realistically, when it comes to the dedicated North American soccer fan, obviously they're going to still watch their team. Les fans finis, that's not a problem. I'm talking about people that you are the casual sports fan that you're trying to read. You're telling me on a Saturday night you're going to compete with the Canadians? Are you outside of your mind? Especially now the Canadians are good and fun to watch. Are you crazy? No, it's not going to happen, right? You're going to get your fans. You're going to get your dedicated fans. But when people have to decide between going to see a CF Montreal game at Olympic Stadium, because it's in the winter and you can't watch it at Saputo Stadium, or going to watch the Canadians, who have the most exciting young core in all of hockey, what do you think the casual sports fan is going to pick? It's and again, this is not just a Montreal thing, right? This is all over the place. You're going to compete with the NBA, you're going to compete with the NHL, and you're going to compete with the NFL. It's a disaster waiting to happen in terms of, now this is Apple TV viewership numbers, right? The stadiums will be what the stadiums are. That's not a problem. But the viewership numbers are going to tank.
Look, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I completely disagree with you. I think that this was a great move because I believe that by aligning markets with the rest of the world, and you mentioned bringing in names, it would be easier to bring in names into a team because the windows align and because it helps, it helps in the business wise. I think what fills stadiums is not necessarily the temperature or what games are going on outside. Yes, do they impact 100%? Some people might choose a Canadians game over going, I don't know, to a CF Montreal game, whatever it may be, because it's the Canadians. But what if, because they did the change of windows, they managed to bag Antoine Griezmann into the team, of a big name? I'm just giving examples here. It could be, I don't know, Kylian Mbappe when he's 30 years old and is looking to retire, whatever. That brings viewerships. That brings eyes. That's what brings. But it would only happen if the stars align, if the windows align. They wouldn't happen if they continue. Now, as it is right now, I think the league is, besides Messi and besides Son, they've struggled to get, most MLS teams have struggled to get the players, the big name players, because the windows don't align, and because of that, sometimes the product in the field fails. Now, is it going to be a perfect plan? Maybe not. As you mentioned earlier, maybe we sit here in a year and we both look like dumbasses protecting our point of view. But at the end of the day, it's a risk that they're willing to take because they see the impact that Lionel Messi had in the seats at every stadium that he went, and they're gambling on that happening again, not necessarily at the volume of Messi, but at a certain level that will bring more seats because people away, like, I don't know, like we see Oger Escobar fans here in CF Montreal, like not Oger Escobar fans necessarily, but Guatemala fans that go to Stade Saputo because they support their country. Is a player that plays in that country. This is a fan or fans that chose to go to see a kid from Guatemala instead of going to a Canadians game because it's so important to them. So the point that I'm giving a very specific example, but I think it does make sense if these windows help bring in these big names that will bring seats to the hockey season. Also is very long as opposed to a soccer season in different ways. That's where I'm at, Elias. I know I'm going completely against it. I'm seeing it more from
that makes sense. The problem is not everyone is Messi, right?
But I said that.
You bring in Thomas Muller, right? Thomas Muller is internationally renowned. Thomas Muller will not move the needle for the casual sports fan. Thomas Muller is one of the greatest players of all time, one of the greatest players of his generation.
Yeah, my favorite.
The casual sports fan, yeah, maybe it'll boost your viewership in Vancouver, but it's not going to bring more eyes to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Maybe it'll bring, incrementally more eyes, but in terms of casual North American sports fans, it won't move the needle. Heung-min Son might move the needle for a couple games, but next year it's not going to move. It's not going to move nearly what it moved this year, right?
Yeah, so I get what you're saying.
It is a pop culture phenomenon because Messi has transcended soccer, right? Cristiano Ronaldo has Neymar, right? These guys have transcended soccer, right? These are household names regardless of what you follow, regardless of even like sports. Those people will consistently bring in casual sports fans. But world-class players that are well-known, that are world-class and household names to soccer fans, people were already going to be watching these games, right? So you may bring incrementally more eyes, but not nearly in the way that you think you are. You're not going to be like doubling your viewership. You're not going to see like a 50% increase in your views for every single game. You may see a couple, right? You're bringing someone like Antoine Griezmann, right? People are going to be coming out. There are a whole lot more French people are going to be coming to Stade Saputo. A whole lot of more people are going to be watching, right? But this is again, people in France are not going to be watching a game at 1 in the morning. They're not watching Antoine Griezmann at 1 o'clock in the morning. And the casual Montreal sports fan, well, maybe we'll tune into a couple games because, who's this Antoine Griezmann guy? Oh, that's cool.
But I mean, now
they're not going to be watching. They're not going to be watching 30 games a year because Antoine Griezmann's on the team.
But you'd be surprised, Elias, because in this day and age, you obviously with technology, you can actually watch games after, right? Recorded games. And if Antoine Griezmann,
if you're not going to watch soccer live, if a casual sports fan is not going to watch something live, they're even less likely to watch a full replay. Maybe they'll watch the highlights. Maybe your YouTube clips will go through the roof. I promise you that. People will watch your YouTube highlights. But the live viewership, I'm talking about like actual people tuning into Apple TV, people buying Apple TV to watch this stuff live.
I mean, in that sense, you're right. But I mean, that's not the only metric that they're taking into account, right? You just mentioned it.
If you're talking about growing your sport is not done through game highlights.
But look what it did to the CPO. Look at the bicycle kick in the snow.
You think people who watch that are gonna tune in at the beginning of the season to watch, people play on grass?
Okay, maybe not 30,000, but you could have maybe that 10 people that are like, hey, that's interesting. I didn't know that league existed or that they play in that kind of weather. I'm interested now.
They don't play in that weather, Andy.
No, but
they don't. They play one game in that weather. People are not going to be tuning in the middle of July going like, I want to see bicycle kicks in the snow. Yay. That's not how that works, right? If it starts snowing like crazy again next year, more people are going to tune in.
But Elias, now people know that CPL exists. Now they know that this 100%. League exists in Canada. Because
knowing that it exists and going out of your way to tune in to watch the games are not the same thing.
I think it starts with that. And then eventually you move on to like, hey, I actually really like this. That highlight is what led me into it. What led me to love the Impact? What led me to love the Montreal was because I was at that 2015 game in Stade Olympique that the stadium went insane with the goal. I was there for that goal. That's what made me love the Montreal Impact. it's moments like this where people are like, oh shit, this is nice. Anyways, that was a personal experience. We disagree with it, Elias. We'll replay this clip 1,000 times and see which one of us got it right on November 18, 2025. But because again, I know it's a long show, so we want to kind of try to cover everything. Now, one of the things that happened also was that Gabriel Gervais, CF Montreal, held a press conference.
Yeah.
And I do want to point that out because you were at the press conference. Were you at the press conference? I'm pretty sure you were.
I was there, yeah.
And I have a question for you because around the league, every team had to answer some way. And I think more than half the teams either gave out a statement, wrote a letter, maybe released something.
The only ones that held an actual press conference.
I don't know how many held a press conference.
I think they're like the only ones.
But isn't that fantastic? I think that's great. It gives the opportunity for media members to ask the questions instead of straying away and
it was a great opportunity to piss me off even more. Honestly, that's what it was. Because because I asked Gabriel Gervais about winterization of the Saputo Stadium, and his answer was no.
Okay, but would you rather have a no than just be quiet and just get a letter? I'd rather get a no.
Oh no! I think the press conference is great. I want to talk about the press conference now, and the fact that when Olympic Stadium is finished, which they're expected it to be 2028. So the first full season of this new schedule, they're expected to have long away breaks. I'm saying we swapped positivity since earlier. Yeah, I don't know.
Andy's getting me angry.
Yeah, Andy was a hater at the beginning of the show. Now I'm a hater. So I think it's a good. Today's show is all about balance, right?
I guess Matt's electricity lasted the show. Go ahead, Eli. Sorry.
But the 2027 season, that means before and after that winter break, there's going to be a long stretch of games on the road, similar to what we saw at the beginning of the season. That also means that given the season starts in August, right? Or starts in July, sorry, we're going to see a huge homestand, which is very rare. We're going to see a lot of home games to start CF Montreal season, which is very rare. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out and how Montreal can manage to capitalize on that. But the fact that you're planning to just split custody of your club between your stadium and another stadium is insane to me. Is inconceivable to me. Because this is not, we're changing the schedule for 3 years and we're going back. No, this is permanent. This is forever, for all intents and purposes. This is forever changing the schedule. So you're telling me forever, all you're going to do, or at least, he said there are no plans, right? Not long-term plans, not short. There are no plans to increase the amount of games that Montreal can host, that Saputo Stadium can host with regards to weather, which means for all intents, for the immediate future and the foreseeable future, you're saying I'm okay with splitting custody with my club in my stadium and somebody else's stadium. At that point, just move to Olympic Stadium and have all your games in one spot. And that way, you never have to worry about moving or have to worry about someone going to the wrong or anything like that. Because if you're not going to do everything you can to maximize the amount of games that are played in your stadium, why have a stadium? I find that to be ludicrous. The rest of the conference went pretty well. I think that he answered a lot of the questions fairly well. That one answer ruined my fucking week, man. Because this is forever. I'm not saying build a roof. I'm saying put some heat on the grass.
Yeah.
Put a hybrid. Do what BMO Field does and put some grass and some turf. Do something. Yeah. Or at least tell me, you know what, to shut me up. You just say, given that it's a permanent schedule change, we have to look at situations that'll, maximize our games. And he said, no. No context, no addition, no nothing. He just flat no.
Yeah, but I mean, look, it's probably one of those things that he rather say no and not give you a bullshit answer. And I'm not in any way protecting Gabriel Gervais.
Give me a bullshit answer.
But at least prepare a politically correct answer that won't fucking ruin Elias's week.
How dare you ruin my
world revolves around Elias.
Exactly.
But but the point being is like, say I think there were a lot of answers that were given by Gabriel Gervais that actually maybe made us ask more questions, which is not necessarily the feeling you want to have when you leave a press conference. But at the same time, I did want to point out the fact that they actually held a press conference, and I like the fact that they gave the media.
I do like that initiative, absolutely.
But it does feel like maybe because there's not a lot of clarity, even for CF Montreal, there's not a lot of clarity as to what the hell's happening with Stade Olympique. They're saying, oh, we're having positive talks. There's even the mention of a bubble, which would be really, really interesting. Which would be really, really interesting. And they talked about it not being shared. And by the way, in the Roses FC press conference, they also said something very interesting, Elias, because I know we're kind of matching the two. But when Annie Larouche spoke about the fields, she was very transparent about why they don't have a stadium. They talked about the soccer fields that are not. There's only one in Montreal that is FIFA that fits FIFA's requirements. And
that's because I hope Claude Robillard is going to be the second.
Yeah, exactly. So it was stuff like that where you're kind of starting to click because she was very transparent about it. That's what I want to hear Gabrielle Gervais say. I want to hear what she said, very transparent as to why they can't do something because this, and that. Very transparent in that. And Gabrielle Gervais, in some sense, it almost feels like I'd rather they maybe train them on it or he's just very good at it. I'd rather not say too much and then dig myself a hole where I got to take steps back after and regret that we made them, because this club has in the past way too many times said something and then had to backtrack. Oh yes, in the past we've said that we're a development club. Now we're not we'd like to clarify the message about being a development club. So I think it's almost like they're watching every word they say, and I think Gabriel Gervais over time has become very good at manipulating the way he the messages.
I mean, it's basically his job, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, does this announcement in any way put you at ease of the future of the club? I mean, we're not going to talk about moving out. I don't want to get involved in any of that. But how do you feel?
I will never entertain move talks seriously.
Yeah, and I agree with you. We're not. But how do you feel about the future of the club with these guys? I know you kind of mentioned it already.
I'm not concerned about the future of the club. I am concerned about the league as a whole overvaluing themselves. And again, we talked about when Messi came to MLS, we said, how are you going to use Messi to grow your league? Are you going to? Not forget how are you going to use Messi to grow your league? And the answer is no, they haven't. They haven't done a single thing to help grow the league as a whole by using Messi. So I think that they're doing this again, where they go out of their way to kind of try and pretend, and not pretend, but act bigger, like a bigger league than they are. And I think they need to understand that they start to do so much grassroots growth that they shouldn't even be all this international stuff shouldn't even be on their radar right now. The grassroots growth still needs to grow so much before you start, trying to compete on a viewership scale with the Premier League and La Liga and Liga and Serie A. No, you still have to grow in North America and establish a foothold. You do that by getting international players, but you don't do that by competing with the bigger sports. You do that by consolidating your niche and growing from there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's to me, I think this league has undervalued itself for a long time, and I think this for them is saying we're ready for the challenge. We're ready to take that next step as a league. Is it going to work? I don't know. We have no idea if it's going to work. Maybe again they're going to
shoot your shot, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, because it's well documented, Elias. When Lionel Messi decided to come to the MLS, everybody at the MLS offices said, "We're like, holy shit, what are we going to do now?" Like that was the reaction because
there was no plan.
They were not ready at all. And it still feels like they're catching up. They're still. I mean. He just re-signed with Miami for, I believe, until 2028, another 3 years. So that gives them a little bit of buffer. But every time it feels like they're a little bit behind as to how to fully maximize the Lionel Messi in MLS. So it happened with David Beckham. It happened here in Montreal with Didier Drogba, where they weren't ready for what it brought. So now they're saying we're going to we'd rather be over ambitious, if you want,
100%.
and then be able to put ourselves in a position where we're going to be like, again, like, oh shit, he's coming, then be, oh my God, we can't welcome this person, or we don't have a product to sell to these stars or whatever. So we're gonna, as the Hattie used to say, wait and see, right? So we're gonna wait and see how it works out. Speaking of wait and see, I know a lot of you have been waiting for a long time. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you guys know, we are heading into the off season for Rose FC and CF Montreal. So we will go, Elias, we're gonna go week by week for the show. We're gonna see when there's announcements or whatnot. We also
if there's some big news, we'll probably have if not, we probably won't be back this year.
Yeah.
We do have a big episode planned when we finally get some news on the Supra, more roster news. I mean, there's some front office news, but we're talking about roster stuff. We're going to have a big episode planned for that because that's going to be really cool. And yeah, grassroots soccer in Quebec is alive and well. So
we're working hard also on bringing guests into the show. So you guys might see interviews here and there. But if you guys don't see us every Sunday night as consistently as you saw us in the season, don't be surprised. It is the end of this. Like I said, we're heading into the off season.
It's okay to tell us that you miss us, though. It's okay to tell us that.
Send me a DM. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, thank you everyone who joined us today. We hope you enjoyed tonight's show. As always, the podcast will always be free to listen and watch on all of our platforms. Make sure to check out our Patreon page for exclusive member content and all of our social media platforms. Like I mentioned earlier, X, Blue Sky, Twitter, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, everywhere. We are everywhere for more content. And follow my account as well as Elias's account for daily updates. Big shout out to all of you who joined the Patreon and all of our social media channels this week. And thank you again to all of you who tuned in tonight. And see you next time for episode 246 of The Ball is Round.